I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, a glimpse into what Washington State's future could look like if we didn't have an ideologue at the helm.
What really sickens me about places like this is that we know people are being assaulted here. Crimes are occurring here.
Plus, Fidel Castro celebrated as a hero in a local high school. And President Biden dabbles in election denialism.
Hello, Virginia, and the real governor, Terry McAuliffe.
That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. Some breaking news to start the show today. A fifth initiative has now been certified to the legislature. 5 for 6. If you're like, what happened to 4? Well, 4 happened during our show yesterday. So the one that just came in this morning, certified by the Secretary of State's office, Initiative 2111, which would keep the state and lawmakers from trying to institute an income tax. It would also do the same for municipalities who might want to do that as well. The ballot measure summary is as follows. This measure would prohibit the state, counties, cities, and other local jurisdictions from imposing or collecting income taxes, defined as having the same meaning as gross income in the Internal Revenue Code. And so that is certainly a big deal. This was a popular one. It comes after yesterday, around the time we were getting the show started, news that the Secretary of State's office had also certified Initiative 2109, which would repeal the capital gains tax, which is just an illegal income tax that they were able to push through and convince themselves that it was just about taxing the rich, when soon it'll be about taxing all of you. The ballot measure summary on that one. This measure would repeal an excise tax imposed on the sale of or exchange of certain long-term capital assets by individuals who have annual capital gains over $250,000. And the ballot measure summary has to call it an excise tax, even though it's not an excise tax. It's because that's what they passed it as, an excise tax. The Secretary of State's office, in case you're curious how this process takes place, so the signature gathering happens, they get over the threshold of what they need just to have a little buffer in case people signed it twice, in case people were trolling them and signed some sort of fake name, in case someone signed it and they're not a registered voter. So the Secretary of State's office released a statement. This was yesterday after the certification of the Capital Gains Initiative. It says Secretary of State Steve Hobbs delivered official notification to the legislature Tuesday that signature verification has been completed and certified for the following initiative to the legislature, Initiative 2109 concerning taxes. It says the signatures on the remaining 2 pending initiative petitions are being verified by the Office of Secretary of State Elections Divisions using a state-mandated process of examining a 3% random sample of submitted signatures. And so essentially what they do, if they know that these people aren't like right on the cusp, I think it's like 10 or 15% overage that you want. They take a random sample of 3% of the signatures to verify that it's within the number and sort of the margin of error, so to speak. So that is 5 for 6 on the initiatives. And still no movement, though, on any of the ones that have been certified and sent to the legislature for their consideration. Remember, the state constitution dictates that besides bills that are meant to deal with our budgetary issues, which obviously are going to take priority, this should be the next priority of the legislature. But it's not the priority of Democrats in charge of the legislature, because these are things that would unwind either policies they've already put through or things they are thinking about putting through, like an income tax. Make no mistake, they're constantly trying to find a way around our state constitution when it comes to taxing income. So meanwhile, not only are they ignoring the initiatives and not giving them hearings, they're also fast-tracking bills, as we discussed briefly on the show yesterday, that would make it more difficult when they do ignore these things and they go to voters, would make it more confusing for voters as to whether they should pass them. So really briefly, we mentioned House Bill 2459 on the show yesterday, which says it's an act relating to requiring public investment impact disclosures for certain alternative measures proposed by the legislature to initiatives to the legislature. And what I said at the time is that's just political speak for essentially because what they're thinking about doing on some of these, like especially repealing the capital gains tax and repealing the Climate Commitment Act. They're getting a ton of money from those two things. A ton of money that they don't need, by the way. I mean, they don't even know how to spend all that money. So what has to happen when you have an initiative that would cut money from the state budget that they're already spending on other things, is you have to make sure that voters know, hey, if you say yes to this initiative in November, here are the things, here's the impact financially to the state of Washington. I think that's perfectly appropriate. But what Democrats are trying to do right now and what they're mulling is they want to send alternatives to the voters so that they can choose between A or B. But they want B to appear on the ballot in the most advantageous form possible. So whereas one initiative would say, hey, here's what the financial impacts of this would be, even if the alternative initiative doesn't have those same financial impacts, they want to essentially list on there things that you'd be saving as voters if you decide to go with their version of it. So you see how that makes it sound much better? They're like, this one takes stuff away, but if you do this, here's what you're saving. So they're trying to appeal to people who like, I guess, some of the pet projects that they're spending this just abundance of money on. So anyway, they're pushing this through. House Bill 2459 got a hearing yesterday. No surprise. The initiatives aren't getting a hearing. They're giving hearings to all these wacko bills like giving Gary Ridgway the right to vote and serve on a jury. And then they're giving hearings lickety-split on bills like this that are trying to position themselves better come November. So Representative Mia Gregerson, her name is on this bill, and Bill Ramos, and so she spoke about it in the committee hearing.
This is actually just a transparency bill, making sure that we are educating folks on the exact intention of legislation and that this being passed and deliberating. So it's actually a very simple transparency bill.
Oh, simple. This is transparency. And you remember, you're not very smart. You're actually really stupid in their eyes. And so they feel like we have to add this additional level of transparency just to inform stupid voters about what we want them to know about our alternatives to the initiatives. That's not what it's about. They're just painting it as, transparency. I have to play this clip, this back and forth. So the Northwest Progressive Institute, which you got to give them credit, they call themselves what they are. They're an institute that pushes progressive ideals. They've been very anti-initiative on these initiatives. Make no mistake, they're very pro-initiative when it's for gay marriage, when it's for gun control. They love the initiative process. They will protect that initiative process at all costs. But if it's initiatives that they don't agree with ideologically, they will do everything they can to destroy it. So you might remember there was a woman who testified. Remember last week when I testified in favor of the bill that would give a little modest protection to signature gatherers so they're not harassed? And I laughed because the ACLU and the Northwest Progressive Institute showed up to testify against it. I'm like, of course the ACLU would show up to testify against it. I mean, how hypocritical is that? And I laughed because the woman from the Northwest Progressive Institute basically argued that she should be able to harass signature gatherers because she has the moral high ground. I mean, that was essentially her argument. So anyway, no surprise that she showed up to testify in favor of this bill that would help kill these initiatives, or at least a couple of them, in November. But I gotta give credit to, first of all, the Democratic chair of the committee for keeping her on topic, and then a Republican committeeman who pointed out her utter moral hypocrisy.
I'm very strongly in support of this bill. NPI supports the citizens' right to initiative. We also support transparency. And as Representative Gregerson pointed out, that's what this bill is about. It's simply about transparency. I don't understand how anyone could be opposed to that, but apparently some are. Lots of reasons to support this, but I want to point out what happens if this bill doesn't pass. Next election, I may get a ballot that says, here's an initiative and the fiscal impact. Here's an alternative that the legislature is proposing, and it doesn't say anything about a fiscal impact. I would not feel comfortable with that. I would feel confused. I was wondering, what are they trying to hide? Was it someone doesn't want me to know?
Yeah, so she's based, and I'll play more of it. Nicole, can you find the longer cut? It's called 2 at the end. Sorry, I put 2 different cuts in there. We're going to play it again, and we're going to play that longer one when you're ready. And so again, I support the people's initiative. No, you don't. You just testified last week. You just testified last week saying you don't want them to get modest protections to gather signatures. You only respect the initiative process when it is an initiative that your progressive institute supports. And that's completely a wrong way of thinking. And if that's the way you think, just admit it. I mean, you're beating around the bush. You're saying as much. Your words say as much. when you look into them and you're acting like you have the moral high ground. It's utterly ridiculous. Let's play the longer version of that clip because it's the back and forth that I really want you to hear.
I'm very strongly in support of this bill. NPI supports the citizens' right to initiative. We also support transparency. And as Representative Gregerson pointed out, that's what this bill is about. It's simply about transparency. I don't understand how anyone could be opposed to that, but apparently some are. Lots of reasons to support this, but I want to point out what happens if this bill doesn't pass. Next election, I may get a ballot that says, here's an initiative and the fiscal impact. Here's an alternative that the legislature is proposing, and it doesn't say anything about a fiscal impact. I would not feel comfortable with that. I would feel confused. I was wondering, what are they trying to hide? Was it someone doesn't want me to know?
Please stay on topic. Do not impugn motives to anyone, and stay on the topic of the bill itself without impugning other people's motives. Thank you. If you can continue now.
The bottom line is, I think it's important that when people look at their ballot, they're able to compare apples to apples. They're able to know the impact of option A, option B. That's what informed voting should be about. And I want to thank Representative Gregerson and Ramos for introducing this very straightforward kind of cleanup bill. And thank you for your time this afternoon.
All right, we have a question from Representative Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was here last year when NPI came out pretty hard at getting rid of advisory votes on the ballot because of the transparency issues of those, but yet you're here talking to us about how important it is to have this, this same basic information now on the bills. However, the information is provided from a highly partisan office, the Attorney General's office. So I guess my question is, why was advisory votes so horrible and yet this is so good?
This is good because it provides voters with information before they make a decision, information that they need to make a decision. The problem with advisory votes is they were misleading because it implied, by saying, should this be repealed or upheld, it implied that if you voted for repeal and enough people did, it would be repealed. That wasn't accurate. And it created, you heard last year from lots of the auditors and others who are helping voters sort of figure out what's on the ballot. It was very confusing. It was very misleading.
You gotta love that. You gotta love the word soup trying to talk yourself out of a corner when your moral hypocrisy has been completely exposed. Oh, we believe in the initiative process. Well, no, you don't, because you were here testifying against protecting initiative signature gatherers last week. Oh, we believe in transparency. No, you don't. The Northwest Progressive Institute was here last year saying that we shouldn't be putting advisory votes on the ballot because what? It gives us transparency as to taxes that were passed without a vote of the people, and we get to weigh in on them. And the reason they got rid of advisory votes was obviously because they don't like being told that people don't like their taxes. They don't like voters knowing about having a list of every single tax that they put through on any given year and being informed about them. And then, of course, the reason that they told everybody about advisory votes that they wanted it repealed was it's confusing. It goes back to they treat you like you're dumb. They don't. I should restate that. They don't think you're dumb. They treat you like you're dumb. Because the real reason was nefarious. They wanted to, for instance, get rid of advisory votes, which give you and I a chance to say yay or nay to taxes that were passed. It's just an advisory. It's like giving them a report card, essentially. That's the real reason. It's nefarious. They don't want people to know what they're doing because they assume, rightfully so, that most Washingtonians aren't following every single bill and new taxes that are imposed. And man, you open up that ballot in November and you used to see that whole list of taxes that were passed. That has an impact. They didn't like that. But they come to you and they say, well, this is just about eliminating confusion. We don't want you to be confused. You just sit at home and don't pay attention to what's happening in Olympia. We have this handled. You don't need to know. So the Northwest Progressive Institute just showing all of its colors. And I love it. All right, let's see. I wanted to play, our friend Jonathan Cho did a great story. He, of course, more than any other journalist in Washington State, he is in the what's the word? In the mix? What is the word I'm looking for? He's on the streets? There's a word I'm looking for.
Submerged?
No. Why? Yeah. Don't get concussions, people. It's really hard to find words. Anyway, he's out there in the mix. when it comes to what's happening with homelessness, more so than any other journalist. He's at homeless encampments. He's holding elected officials accountable. So I was really glad he did this. He reached out to all the candidates for governor and invited them to come out with him to homeless camps to see what he sees on a daily basis and to ask them questions about what they would do differently that's not being done now. So not a surprise that A.G. Ferguson hasn't taken him up on the offer. I'll talk about that coming up in a moment. He did, however, go out with Dave Reichert and Semi Bird, both Republican candidates for governor. So today, the first story he posted was of his walk along at these homeless encampments in downtown on the Blade.
In the trenches.
In the trenches. Thank you. Did somebody on YouTube say that?
Many people on YouTube.
What would I do without you guys? Can you follow me around and just fill in the words for me on a day-to-day basis when I can't think of what I'm saying? Joe in the trenches. So he was in the trenches with Dave Reichert. And man, I was watching this and I told Jonathan, I said, we got to play your stories. We'll play Dave Reichert today. He's going to post the Semi Bird story later, and then we'll play that in full tomorrow. So don't get on me, Semi Bird people. We're going to play Semi Bird's thing tomorrow. But he's out there in the trenches, and it's just so refreshing to, even with both of them, to just see what it would look like for us to have a governor who was honest about the problem, didn't call it a housing problem, and who was willing to go out there and see firsthand just how bad things are without being there just for a photo op because you want some sort of bill passed, which is the only time Inslee goes down. And I know these people are running for office, but you really got the sense that they are genuinely down there and seeing these things and it correlating to what their beliefs are about the crisis. So here's our friend Jonathan Cho with Discovery Institute out in the trenches with Dave Reichert, a Republican candidate for governor.
Oh, thank you guys. Help me empty the box, man. It's heavy. Okay. All these people said they want to leave, but I have talked to people who say, no, I'm fine right where I am. But they're suffering from, again, substance abuse or mental illness. And we expect them to make a decision that is in their best interest. That's not going to happen. We've enabled people to be homeless. We just give them needles, we give them condoms, we give them aluminum foil to do their drugs, and then we drive away. They get food, we drive away. And so they begin to believe that, okay, this is the way it is. Our government's not even listening to the people that are out here on the street and know how to address this issue. The whole idea of providing housing first and just shoving somebody into a abandoned hotel and expecting people to all of a sudden get better because now they have a place to live is ridiculous. You've got to address the substance abuse and the mental illness in order for this to be successful. What really sickens me about places like this is that we know people are being assaulted here, crimes are occurring here, people are being hurt, women are being raped, and children are being sexually abused. And we just stand by. I cannot stand by any longer.
Anybody hungry? Need snacks?
There's so many different voices right now who say they have the solution or the way to address this crisis. What are you telling him is the best way to address the homeless crisis?
We need to be constant. We need to show up for these people. We need to walk alongside them. We need more detox. We need more mental health. And we also need to address really who is homeless. You know, who should be out here, who really should be participating in the resources. You know, where is the misallocation happening? A lot of people are receiving funding but not doing anything about it. You know, I think it's just a big voice here is that we've got to start to walk alongside these people.
My first priority would be moms with babies and children, right?
Get them the help that they deserve and need. We need more transitional housing, safer places for women and children to go. And we need to stop just talking about it.
It's coming back every day, every other day, letting people know you care. I don't feel unsafe. I feel sad right now. I feel disappointed that our government has led us to this place. Why are you here?
Why am I here?
Yes, on the street. You can tell that there are people online that are high on drugs. You can smell some of the drugs, and you can see that they're staggering and off balance, and they're hungry and they're cold. And
in the mighty name of Jesus, we want to thank you for your love.
Some of these people here are a danger to themselves, and they can't make the decision, hey, I need to get off the street, because they're mentally capable of making that decision, and or they're high on drugs and incapable of making that decision. So at some point, we've got to make that decision for them and help them off the street.
Why'd you bring Dave to 3rd and Pike? Why was it so important to be here?
Oh, I think it's important just again, like he needs to see the State of the Union. He needs to see what's happening on the streets, what it looks like at night, when people are getting off work, what the businesses are looking at. But he also needs to see the people that are down here and being people's constants, and that, you know, the private sector is showing up, the churches are here, people are praying, showing love, and it's important. It's really important. Plus, if Dave's going to do something to fix it, he should get behind it and hands and feet and understand it beforehand.
It's not happening only in Seattle, it's happening across the state, right? So public safety, homelessness, people call it, but it's really drug addiction, substance abuse, and mental illness.
I notice on this trip you're not taking any shots at Bob Ferguson or Governor Inslee.
You know what? I've never been a bomb thrower. What I'm saying to people is, look, if you like the way things are, then vote for them again. But if you want change and you want to reset the button here, if you want to reset Washington State, then I'm the guy.
And again, that's Jonathan Cho reporting for Discovery Institute, out with Dave Reichert, a Republican candidate for governor, seeing what's going on with the homeless crisis. I like to see Dave out there like that. I think we need more of that. We need to see him out there interacting with people. You know, I've said I'm supportive of Dave Reichert's campaign. I think it's important to see him talking to people about why are you here, and also just learning and getting ideas for what he can propose, what he can do if he is elected governor. As I mentioned, Jonathan Cho, you know, he offered this opportunity as someone who, you know, probably knows this crisis certainly better than any journalist out there, to come out with him. And Semi Bird also took him up on the opportunity. We're going to play Jonathan Cho's story with Semi Bird tomorrow because he hasn't shared it publicly quite yet. But here's a tease.
If you become governor, are you going to require mandates for treatment?
100%. 100%, because again, we have to save them. It's not a matter of a physical structure. It's them. It's the people. It's our brothers and sisters who are dying.
Yes, we'll have that full walkabout with Semi Bird and Jonathan Cho on the show tomorrow. We definitely appreciate Jonathan being out there and talking to them about this really critical issue. And it gives you a glimpse, I think either of them would be far better than Jay Inslee or Bob Ferguson when it comes to actually dealing with this crisis, because you're willing to admit what the problem is. The problem is not housing. I mean, is that a tiny sliver of the issue? Yes. When these people get better, do we eventually need to have housing that's affordable for them as they get off their feet? Of course. But you're putting the cart before the horse. You're ignoring the drug crisis. You're ignoring the mental health crisis. Jonathan, as I mentioned, he did ask, I love that he asked, knowing what the answer would be, he did ask Bob Ferguson if he wanted to join him out on the in the trenches. I was trying to find the comment. Sorry. Nicole was like, should I put that in there for you? I was like, no, I'll get it. But now I can't find what he said. Hold on a second, because it was funny. He said he doesn't have any trips planned to homeless encampments. Nicole, can you help me find this quick? Sorry. She literally asked me before the show. She's like, do you want me to put that in there? I was like, no, I'll read it now. Oh, here it is. Ferguson's camp. I also reached out to AG Bob Ferguson's camp, but they don't have any encampment visits planned at the moment. They have yet to release a comprehensive plan to address homelessness, drug addiction, and mental illness. Ferguson is currently the Democratic frontrunner for governor. And you don't have to have one plan to be willing to go out. And I'm guessing that Reichert and Bird also didn't inherently have one planned. I mean, they have been out at homeless encampments, but to take that Jonathan Cho up on that opportunity to go out. I don't know if he offered Mark Mullet. I'd be curious to see if he offered Mark Mullet an opportunity to come out with him. So we'll have the Semi Bird walk along with Jonathan Cho tomorrow. But something that Semi Bird mentioned there that I do think is an important conversation, I brought it up in our daily subscriber show poll on Patreon Locals and on X. The question that I posed, it was intended to be kind of open to interpretation, as some of them are, because I really wanted it to spark a conversation about what is the best path forward here. I said, are you in support of long-term involuntary commitment for drug users and the mentally ill who have not otherwise been convicted of a crime, if approved by a court and suspended when a court determines the individual is no longer a threat to themselves or others? And why this is such an interesting conversation to me is, I think, as someone who really values individual liberty, there is a push and pull here, right? There's a push and pull between taking away someone's liberty and their freedom for a period of time and a societal good. and where is the balance between civil liberties and societal goods. Right now, a lot of you are saying yes, that you would support something like that in concept. Now, Washington State, we do have some laws around this. There are certain avenues you can go to for involuntary commitments if someone is, say mentally ill and they pose a danger to themselves or others. But it's a difficult process to go through. It's not really meant to be a long-term involuntary commitment. Because you do have to protect people's constitutional rights. So I think it's going to continue to be, as the fentanyl crisis worsens, as the mental health crisis worsens, it's going to continue to be a conversation that's getting traction as to whether we should be strengthening those laws. Let's see, Kenneth said on Patreon, absolutely, if a person's rights to have a firearm without due process can be implemented, then yes, a person that is a danger to themselves and others should be involuntarily committed. Jethro McButterpants says it is a slippery slope indeed. And yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about this over the years when you have mentally ill people who commit violent crimes and, could it have been prevented sooner? You don't want to go back to a place in society where, you can say, oh, I'm going to throw Granny in the loony bin because I want all her money. Because that is where it's going, is like, oh, I'm going to, if a family member can just say, I want so-and-so committed without a court, without any sort of motivations, you obviously can't get to that point. I also don't necessarily trust all judges in all courtrooms to make the best decision in the interest of public safety and balancing those issues of civil liberties and public safety. So I don't know the perfect solution to this, but I do know that we have to be having the conversation and we have to be working through how you prevent extreme government overreach. I mean, we just got through a period of extreme government overreach with the pandemic. I don't want to be in that place again, but also if someone's libertarians, for instance, real hardcore libertarians, they believe that someone should be able to, smoke or inject themselves to death on the sidewalks, and that is their personal choice. I reject that. And it's one of the reasons I can't take that step into full-blown libertarianism, because those choices hurt other people. They've dramatically reduced the quality of life in Seattle, the economic vitality of Seattle, which impacts all of us. People who are addicted to drugs often have to commit crimes to fund that habit, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see. E says, this one is difficult because you're allowing the government to decide healthcare and they cannot even decide what the Constitution is. The government should not be in charge of medical decisions ever. MB says, my first question is, who's going to set the baseline for crazy? Bob Ferguson, or maybe a call from a neighbor? And that is true. You are, and that's going to be patchwork, right? You can have a law that dictates it. Like we have Ricky's Law in Washington. So like I said, there are some laws that talk about this stuff. I'm talking about strengthening them to long-term commitments until someone is rehabilitated, or at least like consistently on medication if they're mentally ill. The problem with implementation of these things is always who's going to implement it, who's going to decide whether someone is quote unquote crazy or mentally ill enough to be involuntarily committed long term. Okay, a couple more. Danielle says, I voted yes, but this is a very slippery slope indeed, and ideas with good intentions don't always mean good results. I'll do one more. Y says, if they're not committing a crime, I don't know how we can justify this, though I don't know how a person using a drug cannot be committing a crime. Right. I mean, using an illicit drug is in and of itself a crime. But if they haven't committed any other crime as part of that, can you justify an involuntary commitment? So let's keep having these conversations. I'd be interested for you guys to keep commenting on where you think that line is. Okay, before we get to a double dose of unbelievable today, I've been urging you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. Now, there has never been a better time to do this. Specifically when it comes to the state of the insurance industry, their margins right now are not where they want them to be. There was a huge increase in claims they were dealing with and still are over crime, for instance. So man, you could, if you file a claim on the wrong thing, they could drop you like that. And then if you don't have someone like First Mark in your corner, you're left trying to figure out, I have no insurance. What do I do now? And shopping the market for yourself. Don't shop the market for yourself. Don't worry about those things for yourself. Let First Mark do it. First Mark Insurance has been doing this for a long time. They're a local company and you never pay them a dime. So you have someone in your corner dealing with all your insurance needs. They could save you money. They could get you better insurance. They could help you if you run into a situation like that and never pay them a dime. It really is a no-brainer. Dave Taylor is the CEO of First Mark, and he says a lot of people are coming to them too late, after the point where they filed a small claim, and then they get dropped from their carrier, and then they're scrambling.
We could have a client come to us today that maybe just had a comp loss, so like a windshield loss.
Sure.
Right? Just a little ding in your windshield. And they come in, and we don't have a carrier that will take them.
For a ding in their windshield.
Right, for a ding in the windshield, right? And this is changing, right? So we have some carriers that are starting to loosen up already, but I'm just saying there's never been a better time to be a broker because you need multiple carriers to find solutions for your clients these days. You can't just have one carrier because they might not want your client.
Yeah, and while FirstMark can help you out if that happens to you and then you come to them like, I got dropped, what do I do? They absolutely can help you out with that. But I would recommend going to them first, because one of the things that they told Mike and I when we went through the FirstMark challenge is your first call should be to FirstMark. So unless it's a life or death emergency and you need to call 911 or whatever, if you have something you might have to file a claim on, your first call needs to be to your friends at FirstMark, because they're going to tell you whether it's worth it filing the claim or not. Because if you're going to file a small claim and then you're going to get dumped, that might not be worth it. So that free advice that they give you in managing all this is honestly invaluable. So firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. Take the FirstMark challenge today. I'm trying to save you money, people. I'm trying to help you out of a difficult spot. You got to listen to me. firstmarkinsurance.com. They work for you. And they work for me. So I want them to work for you as well. All right, double dose of unbelievable today. Along the lines of a common theme we've been having this legislative session are the types of bills that they're spending their time and energy on while they ignore the real crucial issues facing the states. Let's get to our first edition of Unbelievable. Whoop. Jaywalking is racist. Well, not jaywalking, but the act of enforcing jaywalking laws is racist, as is everything else. And we just live in this, Washington, who knew it was so racist? They propose all these bills saying we've got to stop this, we've got to change this, we've got to do this because it's all built in racism. So you think that the populace is racist in one of the most progressive states in America. That's interesting. So are progressives racist? I don't get it. I thought it was only the right-wingers who are racist. But according to Democrats in Olympia, everything we do is absolutely racist. We need to be protected from ourselves, and people need to be protected from our racist tendencies. And jaywalking, this is something that's been bandied about all the time. There was a bill last session that would have changed the types of crimes that police can pull you over for. What was the reason? Oh, racism. Well, you're pulling over more black people. You're pulling over people based on their skin tone, and so they're getting ticketed more for these sorts of crimes. So you can't even pull people over for those crimes. So now it's jaywalking. Here's the article from Como News. Proposed bill would change Washington's jaywalking laws. State Senator Rebecca Saldana, a sponsor of Senate Bill 5383, said there is new research about who is stopped for jaywalking and why. She said research shows enforcement doesn't stop people from getting hit by cars, adding that jaywalking laws disproportionately impact black people and those who are unhoused. It's, first of all, after the whole Manka Dhingra, rolling out fake research that was then retracted about police pursuits, and then she never admitted that the research was bad, I don't believe anything that you put forth as research. And you're really going to tell me that research shows you that ticketing people for jaywalking doesn't stop people from getting hit by cars? That's like telling me that pulling people over for DUI doesn't reduce highway fatalities. That makes no sense. The claim that more black people and more unhoused people are stopped for jaywalking. So if I'm to believe what they probably think, it's that cops are racist, right? So a cop could see a white person walking across the street and a black person walking across the street and say, I'm going to give that person a ticket, but I'm not going to give the white person a ticket. Or, and I'll be called racist for this, maybe for some reason you have more people of color who are jaywalking and you have more unhoused people who are jaywalking. Now, why is that? Why would that be? You'd have to look into the reasons for that. Could it be some sort of economic reason with unhoused people? That doesn't surprise me. You have a lot of them who are mentally ill. And if you've ever been in downtown Seattle, to have a homeless person just walk into the intersection or walk in the middle of a road while you're driving is not an uncommon occurrence. And that goes back to mental illness. You need to deal with that. But even if you believe that, hey, so first of all, I'll say, I don't think police are out there giving jaywalking tickets. I don't think in Seattle in particular that is a priority of the Seattle Police Department. And even if they had enough officers to do it, I don't think they don't even enforce drug laws. You really think that they're out there ticketing people for jaywalking? Give me a freaking break. But this is just, again, and I'll read a little bit of the bill. This is Substitute Senate Bill 5383. A pedestrian may cross a roadway with a posted speed limit of 45 miles per hour or less at any point, as long as such a crossing does not impede the flow of traffic. This subsection does not relieve a pedestrian from the duty of exercising due care for their safety or relieve a driver of a vehicle from the duty of exercising due care for the safety of any pedestrian within the roadway. Lord, they they just make up bills. I don't know. I said this on Twitter the other day. Lawmakers should be limited to like 2 or 3 bills. They should only be able to sponsor 2 or 3 bills. And they can co-sponsor whatever they want. But that would improve the quality of the bills. That would make them focus on bills that are absolutely necessary. And it would force them to work toward consensus on the bills that they've chosen to focus their time on. Because stuff like this would never, ever come to fruition. If you said, hey, Senator Rebecca Saldana, you can only propose 2 bills this year.
Is jaywalking going to be one of them?
Is jaywalking going to be the thing? And, everything's racist and whatever. Is that going to be the thing? Something that's not even being enforced anyway.
Is this making the public more safe somehow? If you're
No.
allowed to jaywalk? No.
But you know who they blame it on, too.
frustrating.
You know who they instantly blame it on whenever a vehicle hits a pedestrian? Oh, it's the car's
driver,
fault.
right.
It's the driver's fault, right? And it's like, because they hate cars and they hate people who drive cars. And so
Right.
it's like, okay, so you're setting up drivers to get into a situation. I have a story about my dad. That's actually really sad. Someone committed suicide using my dad. This was way back in like the 70s or 80s or something. It was in Fargo, and it was my dad and a cop car on a 2-lane road. And they were driving, and this person who they later came to believe wanted to commit suicide saw them both coming and then jumped out in the roadway. And had it not been the officer had it not been my dad, it would have been the officer who hit this person and who killed this person, right? But it's like, that's a really crappy situation to put drivers in. To like, even if you're not charged with something, you're just saying, there's not going to be enforcement of this, no big deal. These people can walk through the middle of a roadway. But even if I hit them and I'm not charged with anything, I still have to live with that. And my dad lived with that for a long time. It really, really genuinely bothered him, and he could never like not see that person's face.
Right.
You have to live with that. And so you're putting that on drivers too. So not only is it ridiculous, the entire premise of the bill is ridiculous. It's completely unnecessary. It's a complete waste of time. It's unbelievable that this is where your time and energy is focused on. But it doesn't, as Nicole said, does not do anything to make the public more safe. And it doesn't do anything to make the people who you're claiming to care about more safe.
Right.
You're saying that this disproportionately impacts Black people and homeless individuals. So, okay, are they crossing the street more? So you're going to let them do it carte blanche. You're putting their lives at risk too by saying there's no consequences for this.
But it's an opportunity to slam cops.
Oh, 100%. You
That's all it
racist
is.
SOBs. It's just, it's too much. I don't even know what to do with these people. What a waste of time. Okay. Double dose of unbelievable. Boop. Okay. I don't know what it is with public schools and celebrating like violent political movements and dictators. And I mean, I do know what it is. They have teachers who are highly ideological and they are far left and they want their students to be far left and to celebrate people as icons who absolutely they should not be celebrating. So we had given you an example last week of Mar Vista Elementary reading a book to kids called A for Activist, where they celebrated like Marxism. They celebrated some Central American far left militant group called the Zapatistas. Here's a little excerpt of that book.
A is for activist. Jia Jingjiang, Juanita Jamal, justice for the janitors, justicia for all. Megaphones marching, movimiento music. Hip hip hooray, it must be May Day. Protest, power to the people, yeah. Radical Reds, the headlines said. Ruinous rioters, the rumors spread. Rabble rousing riffraff. Really? X is for Malcolm, as in Malcolm X. History's lessons can be complex. Z is for Zapatista, of course.
Of course, where even I had to Google that because I had no idea what it is. And you think, was that 5th graders, right? It was read to 5th graders. Z is for Zapatista, of course. Kind of mentally deranged person writes that book for kids. It's so strange. So something they've never even heard of. Now they're going to go look it up and they're going to say, well, my teacher read this and celebrated this. So these, far left militants must be really cool. Weird stuff. This is weird stuff. Anyway, there's add Fidel Castro to the list. So Jason Rantz had this exclusive. Our friend Jason Rantz, host of the Jason Rantz show on 770 KTTH. School celebrated Fidel Castro as a hero during MLK Assembly. And apparently he was celebrated as a hero for being anti-colonialist. Oh my gosh. And Jason here, this is at Shorecrest High School. happened on January 18th. It was a presentation by staff. A portion of it focused on Castro. A mom brought this up to Jason Rantz because his son texted her and it was like, what is going on here? She said her son was disturbed. Here's from Jason's article. And Jason, of course, and he always does, he gives the school, as we do too, an opportunity to explain, okay, help us understand why on MLK Day, Fidel Castro is being celebrated during a school assembly. That seems a little odd. He wrote, neither the school nor the district will publicly explain why Castro would be discussed during an MLK Day assembly. Shoreline School District spokesperson Rachel Belfield did not respond to multiple requests seeking comment from the Jason Rantz Show on KTDH and our sister station, Cairo News Radio. But an internal email forwarded to the Jason Rantz Show on KTDH showed a staff member explaining the student planners chose to feature Castro because he, quote, worked for the decolonization of this country. The email said the presentation noted he was a, quote, problematic person and figure too. The staff member celebrated the fact that kids were having this discussion. What do you do?
And again, the mom would not go on the record with their name, complain to Jason and not the school. People.
You have to complain to the school because, like, look, and as I said, we're going to fight the fight and we'll do that. But it means more coming from a parent who actually has a child that heard the presentation, going to the school and saying, explain this to me. Because they might not feel accountable to us. It's easy for them to ignore our requests for comment. It's easy for them to ignore us when we have follow-up questions, when their, explanations they give us don't make a bit of sense. But as a parent with a child at that school, you have every right to sit down and to talk to them and to get to the bottom of having them explain why it's appropriate. And you know that there's no explanation for why it's appropriate at all. So I would love to, as much as I would love to, they're never going to come in here and sit down and talk through with us why A for activist and all the things in there makes sense to read to fifth graders. They can't because they don't have facts and reason on their side. So as a parent, if you sit down and you really challenge them on it and they fail to explain the justification, I think it's much more likely that they stop doing stuff like that. And then you can come to the media and you can say, hey, because we want to know about these things. Don't get me wrong. We absolutely want to know. Every single person watching this who lives in Washington State pays taxes that fund our public education system. We have a right to know. We have a right to be angry about it, that's where our money is going, to creating activists and pushing your ideology on kids. But parents have a huge stake in it and your voice matters. And so I want you to go. I want you to push back against these teachers, ask questions, put it in writing. If they won't meet with you, ask questions via email and then come to us and share with us the explanation you got that we would never be able to get because they're scared. They're scared to give it to us. Unbelievable. Homeschool your kids. Homeschool your kids. And that's my song that I just made up. You're welcome. Boop. Okay, happening tomorrow, 3:30 p.m., Zach Abraham at Bulwark Capital is having their first risk management strategy live webinar of the year. There's a lot going on this year, from the political environment that we're in, the elections, global unrest. So if you are nearing retirement, man, you've worked hard your whole life, you've been saving, you've been contributing to your 401k, doing everything you can to set yourself up. Don't put that at risk. The time to manage your risk is before you enter a risky climate like we're in right now. So sign up for the live webinar, knowyourriskradio.com, knowyourriskradio.com. It is completely free, 3:30 p.m. tomorrow, January 25th. You'll not only hear Zach Abraham and his team's take on what's happening in 2024 and some of the risks associated with the state of the market, but you can also learn about their strategy to protect retirement portfolios against risk. It is really what they specialize in, risk management at Bulwark Capital. So again, knowyourriskradio.com, knowyourriskradio.com. Sign up for their free risk management webinar happening tomorrow at 3:30 p.m. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. I already decided what I want to talk to Zach about on the show tomorrow because he joins us every Thursday. The capital gains initiative that was just sent to the legislature and certified. I'm very curious about his thoughts on the capital gains tax and the implications, like in our state.
Well, I'm sure I know.
Well, I know he's not. I know he's not in favor of it. I'll be honest, if Zach Abraham was an investment advisor who supported the capital gains tax, I probably wouldn't recommend him as someone to handle your wealth. He also probably wouldn't be an advertiser on the show. I think that's safe to say. However, they want to disregard the impact that capital gains has on like our state as a place to bring entrepreneurs, our state's economic vitality, scaring away people that like Jeff Bezos, who would rather go live in Miami on his yacht than pay billions in taxes here. Shock of the century.
Right, that would probably be Zach's advice to somebody that was in jeopardy of paying that.
Right, like say, go to Florida,
go somewhere else, buy a house.
So yeah, we'll get Zach's advice on that tomorrow. I think that's a good topic. Okay, speaking of absolutely spitting on our business environment and not wanting it to flourish in the slightest, if you live in the city of Renton, you're going to get a ballot probably starting today for the February special election. So be on the lookout for that. But also you're going to have an initiative on there to decide whether you want to raise the minimum wage in the city of Renton. So right now, the only dictate in the city of Renton is that employers pay at least the statewide minimum wage, which right now is $15.74. But the Raise the Wage Initiative, 23-02, would require that most employers raise the minimum wage to about $19 an hour in the city of Renton. This is a very prime example of what happens in Seattle doesn't stay in Seattle. I mean, technically, I think it was SeaTac that started the kind of minimum wage movement. I remember being back in the day when Shama Sawant was a new Seattle City Council member. She got arrested down there at a protest I was at. And I think it had to do really with airport workers and stuff like that. But anyway, then Seattle. And so not a surprise that the city of Renton is dealing with it. I'll also say, good for you. I love initiatives. You see this? Hey, Northwest Progressive Institute, take note. You see how I'm not railing against the initiative's existence? If you can get enough people in your city, I think it was like 8,000 or 9,000 signatures that they had to get and that they turned in. They did it. The city council in Renton had an opportunity to just adopt it. It said the Renton City Council had the option of approving the wage increase immediately, but they decided not to do so. And so it went to the voters. That's the process. Beautiful. I think you should look into it. Look into the raise the wage arguments. I mean, they're obvious. They don't think that minimum wage, $15 plus, is enough for people to survive financially. So they want businesses to be mandated in the city of Renton to pay people more. That's what their argument is. But there's also this question about, do they understand economically the implications of having that big of a jump for businesses, with 15 employees or more, especially during a time where we're in uncertain economic times. You have businesses that have just come out of this really difficult situation with the pandemic, where they didn't have, a lot of business for a period of time, and it's very, very lucky that they survived. And so is this the best time to be pushing something like this? And so the Renton Chamber of Commerce reached out to us and asked us if they could come on and talk about some of the challenges that we are that they're facing and pushing back against this effort. So the CEO was nice enough to join us to talk about their position. Diane, welcome to Undivided.
Thank you very much, Brandi. Thanks for having me here today.
Yeah, so, cities all around you have gone through these fights over the years, so it can't be a particular surprise that it's found its way to Renton.
Correct.
Yeah. I guess, it won't surprise people that the Chamber of Commerce is opposed to raising the wage, I think by and large. But you guys have been through, like all cities, an interesting economic period during the pandemic. So what are your fundamental arguments against it?
Well, I think it's important to differentiate. It's not that the Renton Chamber of Commerce is against raising the wage so much as we are against this particular initiative.
Oh, so explain.
There are a lot of provisions that come along with this initiative that are not being broadcast. And those are restrictions and enforcement that become onerous on businesses, particularly challenging for small and mid-sized businesses who don't have the same type of resources available to them. And those are the things that we are very concerned about at the Renton Chamber of Commerce, as we have received feedback from our business community that they have concerns with as well.
Yeah, so walk us through those about what would be onerous about them.
This initiative comes in and it's not just about the wages. There's the annual certification process. The impact upon business begins at the employee threshold of 15 employees or more. The campaign is reporting this to be about big business and going after the big corporations and citing corporate greed. If that was truly the premise behind this initiative, then we would see a cap on employees far greater than 15. Between 15 to 499, while they're expressing it as a tiered impact, it's still an impact. The proponents of this initiative say there's a 3-year rollout, which had the initiative gone into play in January 2023 when they started, it could have been indeed a 3-year rollout. However, it's coming to ballot now. The first year it will take effect is July 1st, 2024, and employee or businesses with 15 employees will be held to the same standards as those businesses with over 500 employees, effective July 1st, 2026. So while the proponents say this is a 3-year rollout, it's not a 3-year rollout. And even for those businesses that have 500 or more, we're looking at 4 months here that we're going to be increasing their labor costs by 25%. That's a huge impact overnight. Even with the most successful, what is touted as the most successful contract and labor negotiations just recently with General Motors, that's a 25% increase over a 4-year period.
Yeah. What are some of the big corporations that would fit that mold that are operating in your city?
Oh gosh, the big corporations that fit that mold that operate in our city. I mean, we have a number of big businesses within our city. We have Amazon is in our city. We have IKEA. We have Boeing. And I'm going to say it depends on whether it's a franchise business or a corporation, because you have franchise businesses that are being treated on the same scale as large corporations. So you may have a franchise business that has one employee and a sole independent operator, but they are now being classified along the lines of the 500 employee or more if they are a franchise business and part of a bigger entity.
Yeah. So if we put aside this particular initiative and what voters down there are going to have to decide on soon, just generally speaking, when it comes to the economic situation in Renton, where would you say it stands post-pandemic?
Oh, businesses are still struggling. I mean, look at events alone, and I'm gonna put it to events for us at the chamber. We're hosting events. This is the first year that we've been told, yep, there's no restrictions, you don't have limitations, you can proceed with the confidence in planning the next year forward without the uncertainties that existed with COVID. That's speaking from my experience. Businesses are the same, but now you have the fear and trepidation that's been instilled with the recession and talks of the impacts and the overarching impacts of COVID and the layoffs with the tech industry. Now you have consumer confidence on the decrease. Businesses are trying to survive. Business owners are working themselves. They're not collecting paychecks, and they're really trying to make it work. They are impacted by costs, just the same way you and I are impacted by costs as consumers.
Yeah, and the other side would say, well, workers are impacted by all that stuff too, increasing inflation, increases at the pump, at the grocery store, all of this, and they're just not making enough money to survive. What's your rebuttal to that?
To me, that sounds like a cost of living challenge versus a minimum wage challenge.
Aren't they connected?
I don't believe so. I mean, are they connected? Yes, I would be ignorant to say that they're not. But are they? Is it one dependent upon the other? I don't know that I would agree with that. I mean, we have a housing crisis within our region that is just egregious. We have one corporation I'm aware of just recently, and they're not within the Renton community. One corporation just purchased their 50,000th house. That's one organization that has 50,000 homes. That's, to me, not intended the way our housing market should be. We have other challenges that we can certainly look at that could make a difference within our community and for workers. And I don't think putting the ownership on the back of businesses, especially small and mid-sized businesses, is the right way to go.
I agree. I just have to play devil's advocate sometimes. I mean, I got to throw him a bone at some point. But to that end, you mentioned the tactics of the folks who are backing the Raise the Wage initiative, and we see this all over the place. I mean, I've always said what happens in Seattle finds its tentacles elsewhere, and this is very much out of the Seattle Shama Sawant sort of playbook, that anytime they want to do something like this, it's about big, rich people and businesses, and it's not going to impact you and I. How do you counter that? How have you been trying to counter what has been a successful narrative in other cities?
Oh gosh, a successful narrative in other cities that would get me not focused on the race within our own community and the what makes a difference here. And I bring that up because it's important to me to recognize that Renton is unique and we have challenges that are unique. And likewise, we should have solutions that are unique. This initiative is a cut and paste boilerplate initiative that came from Tukwila, that just passed in Tukwila. Respectfully, Tukwila is a very different environment for the business community. It is the retail capital of the state of Washington. We will never see that same type of foot traffic here in Renton for our business community as they do in Tukwila. So is that one size fit all approach appropriate to bring into the Renton community?
Well, Diane Dobson with the Renton Chamber of Commerce, we do appreciate it. And I just want you to close by, you were telling us sort of offline about how nasty and vicious this campaign has become, really from the side pushing it. Can you just solidify that as we close here?
The proponents of this initiative, they're instilling fear and chaos into the business owners. They're going into shops saying you don't care about workers, you're exploiting teenagers. They are turning to social media for attacks and challenges. It is really ugly, and it is what I would, it is what I would say is I have seen as common in the socialist community. And I say that from, not that all socialism is bad, but we have seen some of those disruptive tactics, and it's scary. It's scary for businesses to speak out. It's scary for the Renton Chamber of Commerce, who now is being labeled as a very oppressive organization, even down to a racist organization by some of the sponsors of this initiative, saying we don't care about women of color because we're opposed to this initiative. And rather than keeping it about the cause, they're making the attacks very personal. And I think it's telling of a way of our changes of society, of the democracy that we're seeing. And I think there's story to be told in that approach. And how do we get back to being able to agree to disagree and the beautiful things that exist about democracy?
Amen. That's Diane Dobson, the CEO of the Renton Chamber of Commerce. We appreciate her time. Something I noticed about the Raise the Wage campaign. Will you pull their picture back up? Doesn't it remind you of the logo for Raising Cane's, the chicken company? Doesn't it just scream we're advertising for a chicken strip fast food restaurant?
Yes, although I'm not sure that many people around here would know that.
Oh, is Raising Cane's not a
No, that's
West Coast?
No, yeah.
Is that my Midwest showing?
Yes, it is, I believe.
It's really good chicken. I'm all in. Culver's too, Culver's. Did you guys not, you don't have any Culver's here?
No.
Oh my gosh. Runza. I'm telling you, Runza, it's like this place that has this little, wow, we're so off track. They're like little meat pockets where it's like a, what are the cheap meat pockets that you can get?
Like Hot Pockets?
Hot Pocket. It's like a Hot Pocket, but good. A Hot Pocket, but actually has more than one little slice of meat in it. Anyway, it just reminded me of Raising Cane's, and every time I see that picture and their little thing, Raise the Wage, I'm like, are you selling me chicken strips, people?
It looks like the closest one is in Oregon or Alaska.
Yeah, they're selling us ridiculousness, that's for sure. And running a small business now, what I can say is you don't just automatically get more revenue. And that's the thing that they really fail to realize. And I'm not saying, that wages should just stay stagnant. I mean, that's not realistic either. You won't get people to come work for you. But as long as you can hire people at that wage and you're treating them well, et cetera, if you all of a sudden increase costs 25% for businesses that aren't bringing in 25% more revenue, they're going to let people go. And then you have someone who, they're not making $15 an hour, they're making $0 an hour. And that has been and can be the outcome. So keep your eye out for your ballot. But in Renton, that's a very important decision to make, but really weigh the potential consequences of it. Okay, Wes Jones, our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com. If you're in the market to sell your home, 2024 might be a good year. If you've been pondering it, but 2023, you're like, gosh, interest rates are so high. Maybe this isn't the best time to put my home on the market. I'm not going to get the kind of offers that I want. The Fed has been forecasting that it's going to cut the interest rate a couple times in 2024. And if that comes to fruition, Wes Jones says that could be a very good thing, even if they're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Well, my expectation is that rates are going to come down. The Fed is telling us they are going to. It is an election year. I would have expected that to happen, even if the Fed wasn't talking about it. And if it wasn't interest rates, it'd be something else. It'd be tax credits, first-time tax credits, something else, some other type of incentive to spark housing, because, come November, they're going to want people feeling good about the economy. And, I listened to, Zach Abraham, one of your other guys, really smart dude. And, he has concerns about the economy, that are not going to be controllable. But what can you control? You can control housing to a certain degree. And if they can put pressure down on interest rates, allow more transactions to happen, it's going to make people feel better.
Yeah, so get started as soon as you can. If you know that you're going to sell your home in 2024, you don't have to wait until a month before you sell to reach out to someone. Sure, reach out to a few real estate agents, but don't choose one until you visit sellwithwes.com, talk to Wes Jones. He's going to give you a few things you're not going to get anywhere else. He's going to give you a free market analysis so you know how your home might perform when it hits the market. He's going to take you through their Listing Boost concierge service in case you need some cosmetic upgrades to your home. You can also start by simply using their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth, because it might be worth more than you think. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. Can I also give just a friend shout out to Wes? He is so sweet. So last time he was in taping, I was just telling him how hard it is to find a good lease space, because we need a bigger space for the studio. And I didn't even ask him to help. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I booked a tour here. I'm working on booking a tour here. And he's just the nicest. So he met us out last Saturday at a potential, in the morning, on his weekend, at a potential new location for the studio. And I was like, I just love this man. I didn't even ask for his help. So sweet. Okay, dipping outside Washington State. Trump won in New Hampshire, not a surprise. Nikki Haley is not dropping out. Also, I don't think a surprise. She's at least going to go to South Carolina. That's her home state. But she's talking about, there's dozens of contests coming up. So maybe she's in it for the long haul and then hoping that in an effort to unite the party that Trump is going to pick her as her VP. I don't know. But anyway, Biden also won New Hampshire, even though he had to do a write-in campaign, which was interesting. So he was in Virginia. Just speaking of Biden, he was in Virginia, and he all of a sudden exposed that he is an election denier.
Hello, Virginia. And the real governor, Terry McAuliffe.
You see how the crowd was like, can we do that? Can we make jokes like that? Where, of course, the governor is Glenn Youngkin. Now, look, I think those jokes are harmless, but he hasn't treated them as harmless. He hasn't treated election denial. And I'm not comparing his joke to January 6th, so just back off, people who might say that. Not comparing it. But when you are staking your whole campaign on I'm the president who's going to save democracy and vilifying anyone who questions elections left, right, and center, you cannot make jokes like that and expect them to go unnoticed. Glenn Youngkin is the governor of Virginia. So I do think that if Biden wants to if he really cares about the election denial sentiment in this country growing and growing, then probably shouldn't be making jokes like that. What I think is interesting, though, is Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, Peter Doocy at Fox News, asked her about that, which I love Peter Doocy. And, she just has no good answer for it.
Is election denying a joke now?
What do you mean? You have to say more than just make a random statement.
Why did the president say, hello, Virginia, and the real governor, Terry McAuliffe?
He was making a joke about Terry. He was making a joke. If you play it back, it's clearly that the president was making a joke.
What's the joke?
He was making a joke about McAuliffe's previous term as governor.
How are you guys going to convince people, though, that this idea of denying election results is very bad if President Biden is going out and making jokes like this?
He did not deny it. He congratulated Governor Youngkin. Matter of fact, when he won his election, he did it out of the gate. Out of the gate. Really, truly. He congratulated the governor. And not only that, We've had opportunities to work closely with the governor over the past couple of years. And, this is a president that works across the aisle. We've seen that many times. And he was making a joke.
I do just love it. Like, she's just squirming. And I love Peter Doocy going, what's the joke? Like, it's not that funny, right? She's, it's about his previous term. Really? I don't get it. I don't get it.
Across the aisle. He doesn't even work in the White House.
Oh, wow. Saucy Nicole. That's true. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to make that one of the key issues of your campaign, then I'm sorry. It's not something that you should be joking about, bottom line. One thing, I hesitate always to play just clips of Biden stumbling over his words because he's old. I always want to make sure I'm not just playing the clip to make fun of him.
I always want to because I think he's asked for it when he
I'm
become president.
I'm always like, no, we have to have some bigger point. We all know that he's unfit to be president. We all know that his faculties are on the decline. That's not a secret. But I think this clip says more about the people who are supporting Biden than it does about Biden himself.
We'll teach Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit.
One more time, Nicole. Can you give it one more time for me?
We'll teach Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit.
I can't figure it out.
Don't mess with the women of America unless you want to get the benefit.
Like, what benefit of messing with the women?
If there's a benefit, you might want to.
All right, one more time for me.
We'll teach Donald Trump a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women in America unless you want to get the benefit.
So what I want to point out there is not that's, I don't know what he's trying to say, but the instant cheers. It's like sheeple. The instant cheers of...
They don't even know what he said.
No one in that room knows what he said. But he was like, yeah! What? Because he said something about Trump that they knew was negative. So they're like, yes!
Well,
that's
teach
ridiculous.
Trump a lesson. Yeah!
Yeah! Oh my gosh. So it's just like, man, if we can't get to the point where we're willing to acknowledge that someone from our preferred party has fallen short or maybe isn't qualified or isn't mentally able to do the job, that is where we are. That's a troublesome place to be. If you're going to stand behind someone when they said something that you could not decipher whatsoever, and then cheer because they said the name of someone you hate, come on, people, wake up, sheeple. Okay. Speaking of, before I do my Eastside Weight Loss Clinic ad, I was joking the other day that I'm trying to lose 15 more pounds, and if I do, I'm going to post a bikini pic, which Nicole said I was way too classy to post a bikini picture. No, I'm not. I'm never too classy to make money. Leland Taylor gave us a $19.84. I see what you did there. $19.84 super chat. This is to help pay for the swimsuit glamour shots. Look, if you think it's going to be a glamour shot, it's going to be like Nicole taking a cell phone pic of me at my best angle.
You won't let me do that. You will take a selfie and it just might have your legs in it.
Oh gosh, my legs are great. I was looking at my legs in the mirror the other day. Legs. I'm like, man, I've always had good legs.
Yeah.
Because when I gain weight, I'm like a turnip. it's like my legs always stay skinny. It's like I gain weight up top. So I'm just like the penguin, like the penguin on Batman.
Aww. I don't think you've ever looked like the penguin on Batman.
All I'm saying is like my legs never change.
Wada.
But anyway, I don't look like the penguin anymore thanks to Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. EastsideWeightLossClinic.com. I'm down 37 pounds. I didn't lose an ounce of that out of my legs. It all came from my upper body per our previous conversation. I lost most of it in just 2 months. And so it was this really quick, satisfying weight loss that I think you strive for in other yo-yo diets that I've tried and up and down diets. And that's the way that the program is structured. I was carrying around excess weight. I wasn't used to carrying around. They come up with a plan so you can lose the excess weight quickly, and then you can maintain that weight loss for the rest of your life without feeling like you're on some sort of lifelong diet or going back to looking like the penguin. So I'm now more than a year on the program, feeling great. There's no going back. EastsideWeightLossClinic.com. EastsideWeightLossClinic.com. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation with Dr. Ryan Coogan. Okay, I'm going to sneeze, but before that, I'm going to read some questions and comments. Matt Gilbert with a $5 super chat. We need more rainbow crosswalks, less jaywalk, more gay walk. Are you putting that in there for me to read?
Yeah.
Oh.
Typical Matt.
Brandon Robillard said, $5 super chat. Alliterative activist gay walk chalk. I don't get it. If you want to pay $5 for me to say that, read it out loud, like, that's fine. Let's see. On homelessness and Dave Reichert and Sammy Bird being out with Jonathan Cho, Nick Gobu says it's never been a housing problem. It's always been a mental health and addiction problem. Mugshot Espresso, Dave Reichert's humility is what stands out to me. In an era of heavy polarization and wanting fighters, his humility is refreshing. And that is why I think that was Dave Reichert at his best, because when you meet him and you know him, he's a very kind guy. He doesn't speak ill of people, which I think does set him apart in politics. And he wasn't out there dogging on, as Jonathan Cho said, he wasn't out there, as I do, dogging on Jay Inslee and Bob Ferguson. This is why I'm not, I maybe wouldn't make the best governor, because I'd be out there like, you suck, you know? But, and he's, you know.
I think it's implied. He's had the role for 12 years, and it's still like this. It's like this under his current, you know.
Yep.
Governorship.
It is. It's gotten worse under his governorship. Yes. I mean, and then he's spending $143 million to get 140 people out of homelessness, and it's ridiculous. So
now feel free to say it in your campaign ads.
Yeah, feel free to say it. I don't think you'll see a lot of attack ads from Dave Reichert. I don't know if that's going to be a good or a bad thing. I'm sure that political action committees will do some attack ads on his behalf, as PACs often do. I just don't see that.
I just don't see as many attack ads. Can we just see, like, sell us on what you want to do? No. Stop being so ridiculous.
I agree, but one side's always going to do it. So your decision is, do you push back, do you fight back, or do you fold? Or do you just hope that people are sick of it and you just stay the course? Let me see here. Sharon Barber says, I hope this is Dave getting hot at the right time. While Bobby Wonderful is meeting with unions, Dave needs to be hitting the streets hard. I agree. Country guy, give Ferguson a break. He hasn't had time to consider the homeless problem. He's been busy suing people, which is, I suppose, his job. Lottie Wilson, it's Lolly.
Lolly.
I was just going to say, that's a good name too. I was going to say I love the name Lottie. Lolly's good too. Lolly Wilson on the minimum wage vote in Renton. Minimum was never meant to be a living wage. That's a good point. It's the minimum for a reason.
It's an introductory to the workforce. Wage.
Yes, and every single person, people have built very successful lives and had their first job being minimum wage. I watch Shark Tank a lot, and there are a couple sharks who, they're billionaires, and they're like, oh, my first job was as a waitress or whatever it is. Everybody's been there. It teaches hard work ethic.
It's also a motivation. I never wanted a minimum wage other than like babysitting in high school. And so, I mean, it's motivation to get something else. Find something that you have to work hard at.
Well, find a career.
To get another a higher rate.
Yeah, you find a career,
well,
right?
Work into a career, yes, but
yeah, and even places like Starbucks, which I would argue there are a lot of businesses in Washington State that don't pay just the minimum wage. I mean, I see out by us the McDonald's like $20 an hour starting wage, and Safeway, they're offering baggers like $22 an hour because they can't get anybody to work, and that's also it is like they'll pay people what people will work for.
Right.
So if you can hire them at 16, they're going to hire you at $16 an hour. If you can't, then you're going to raise it to 22, and that's what you're seeing. Right. So that's how it works. That's economics.
Right. And I think in this case, if you have a bunch of businesses that can't support a higher wage, then they close. And then they were complaining that part of the raise the wage argument is that people are having to drive out of Renton to get a job that's not minimum wage. Well, if all of those places close, then you're going to have to drive out of Renton to go to, the grocery store or the Bartels or whatever it is. Anyway, so it has repercussions that have to be considered. And like she said, it's not meant to be a living wage.
No, and even businesses acknowledge it's not meant to be like Starbucks. They pay $20 an hour, but they also do a tuition assistance. They're trying to get you to leave. They're like, hey, this is a job for a short period of time, but we also want to pay for your education so you can do something else. Not like they're paying for your college so you can go to college and study how to be a barista. No, they're paying for it so you can start a career and then work here as a student or whatever it is. So I understand.
When you can have a roommate, when you're not married with 4 kids, that's not when you're supposed to have that job.
Exactly. Erica Monique Nelson says, when or if it happens, prepare for child care tuition costs to rise significantly. Scary stuff when average care for an infant 0 to 1 already sits at $1,600 a month on average. And I'm assuming that is because you mean like the child care centers are going to raise their costs, and so then it's going to be increased for everyone else. Yeah, I mean, gosh. So I'm glad that Mike's a little older than me, because if we ever have a kid, then he's the free babysitter. I'm sorry. I'll stay in the workforce. You can babysit.
Okay. But you make more money working, and you need a lot of money for a kid. So.
That's true. But, once he retires, he's got that good, pension or something, and he can do that. Okay, is that it for questions and comments? Should we get to our closing sanity check? Is Oregon all of a sudden like a bastion of sanity? It appears so, at least in comparison to Washington State. This is the article from the Saddle Times. With Oregon facing rampant public drug use, lawmakers backpedal on pioneering decriminalization law. Well, wouldn't you know, there are lawmakers who are willing to acknowledge that some woke idea isn't maybe the best thing for the people they serve. It says, Democratic lawmakers in Oregon on Tuesday unveiled a sweeping new bill that would undo a key part of the state's first-in-the-nation drug decriminalization law, a recognition that public opinion has soured on the measure amid rampant public drug use during the fentanyl crisis. The bill would recriminalize the possession of small amounts of drugs as a low-level misdemeanor, enabling police to confiscate them and crack down on their use on sidewalks and in parks. It also aims to make it easier to prosecute dealers, to access addiction treatment medication, and to obtain and keep housing without facing discrimination for using that medication. So, Washington State, the next time you're considering some sort of bill which will invariably come up that would further reduce the punishments for people who use drugs out in the public, look no further than our neighbors in Oregon who have already tried it and decided that it is not going to work. That has been your sanity check for today, and that has been today's edition of 116. Doesn't even feel like we went long. I'm having so much fun with you guys. That has been today's edition of Undivided. If you've not become a subscriber of the show already, please do so. It's just $5 a month, and it helps us support and expand the work that we're doing, especially during a critical election year. It's like $57 a year. You could support us for the whole election year for like less than $60. So think about it, because you get 2 months free if you subscribe for a year. undividedpod.com. Also, shop our merch store. While you're there, some of our items are starting to sell out. See you tomorrow on the live show at noon.